Leila Barakat. I'm with the Syrian American Council of the very, very good program for you tonight. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Jabber. He's a SAC, a local board member. He was born in Damascus and he's a local physician here in Sacramento. Welcome.
Sarah, thank you for coming. Today my presentation is going to be focused about what is SAC doing. And of course we're all here to support our people in Syria. We may say we're not really interested in organizations. We do not necessarily need or feel the urge to support organizations in America. Why would we need them? But remember, all this event that you're seeing, organizing these volunteers and getting wonderful speakers here, all need organizations to work on and organize it and get the information to you and be this channel for your work here. So what is SAC doing? There's principles for SAC work, and I apologize for having only one projector. That's why we need to support SAC, so we can have two projectors. Essentially, we want to amplify the voice. We know our case now is being determined by international powers and regional powers. We want the Syrians to have a say in this. We live in the US, we enjoy democracy, we want to organize our voices, to amplify our voice, and we have a seat at the table when our future is being discussed. What we do is we bring pressure and advocacy in Washington, D.C. As you probably all know, everything in America by lobbying. So we want to be able to have a seat. And this is the SAC national office in Washington, D.C., where it meets with the politicians, presents our perspective to them, and try to push for our interest and the interest of Syria and the Syrian people. We do media advisories. Some of our members and some staffers in SAC have had significant experience sending media advisories, so our side of the story is being covered. The true story is being covered, and what the Syrian Americans feel and their opinions and the true opinions are being heard and conveyed to the wider society. This is how we reach other communities and recruit help from them. These are examples of some of the senators that SAC staff have reached out to and worked with to advance the cause of the Syrian of Syria. This is, of course, media outreach. This is Mohammed Al-Afghani, the media director at SAC, on national TV, on CNN, on Russia Today, on all media outlets. So awareness, universities are of course places where ideas are fermented, young people are there, and activists eager to know our side of the story. They are the ones who might go beyond what's in the broad media and the catchy headlines to listen to our story. These are the people who are influenced. We try to organize events there. This is a national campaign in Washington, D.C., where a lot of the staffers with the senators and congressmen live and work. And this is the trains they use to go to their work every day. So this is where SAC's trying to reach. Some of you, Jazakumullah khair, have helped with this other campaign nationally, Save Syrian Children. People driving on highways and then the overpass can see the banner. Go to the website, it's easy to remember and learn about what's happening to the Syrian children and what could be done to save them. It's a way to amplify our voice and recruit the help of the wider community here. This is just examples of local efforts and efforts done. All the thanks to some of you have organized events like this, Tears of Syria and other events. In the upper right corner is Nisr, who is a SAC staffer who have made several trips. I'm aware of at least 2 inside Syria to bring the stories back, to come back and tell CNN, this is not what I heard, this is what I have seen and lived through truly, and take her experience to Washington, D.C. So when she's meeting with people, she's telling them first-hand account of what's happening inside Syria. Of course, all the thanks to you, our community members, and our brothers and sisters and people who love justice, who have helped us, of course, non-Syrians. This is the local events, all the thanks to our community. We had events in the Bay Area, we had events in universities, in local universities, in Stanford, standing up with the students of Damascus University, Aleppo University, and with the against rape in Syria. We have reached out, thanks to the MSA West Conference, and presented our voice there. We had, of course, our volunteers dropping the banners. Thank you all for people who volunteered there. And we have a lot of volunteers. So our ladies in the community have helped not only today by feeding us, but also they have been implemented in bake sales and selling all kind of Syrian pastries that are desired to raise funds to go support medical relief and humanitarian relief in Syria. Of course, this is you're doing that, and that's, you are SAC. There is nothing SAC. SAC is us. Our collective effort is sometimes called SAC because we need a name for it, but thanks to you for doing all this effort and all this work. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to be more organized. We're trying to support people in Syria, but now the revolution has been going on for more than 2 years. People inside Syria are smart, they're organizing themselves, they're governing themselves in areas that we call it liberated. We have local councils. Syrians are showing they can govern themselves, they can be organized under the hardest of circumstances. And we have cities in North America partnering with local councils, trying to see what they can do to support our people in Syria, build the new Syria we want to see. We want to be able to have a shining example of what Syrians can do when the brutality of Assad government is lifted. So we have Chicago working with Aleppo, and we hope that us here in California will be able to help cities that organize themselves also build new life and be shining star of what Syrians can do. What can we help? First, see what's happening in your local area and how you can help. Everybody can offer something, Syrian or non-Syrian, whether it's sending an email or organizing an event, talking to people you know. You all can do something. So if you'd like your help to be with SAC, please become a member. We grow with you, and SAC, so SAC is not a few people only, Syrians and non-Syrians. Of course, we are in a mosque, so keep Syrians in your prayer. We need all the help we can, and support Syrian relief and development. They have been one of the first charities to start working inside Syria to deliver aid where it's most needed, and I'm sure you're going to hear, you are the miracle, so don't wait for one. Jazakumullah khair for being here today.
From March 10th until March 19th, I was in Turkey. And I landed I was in the city of Rihani, and then the next day we crossed the border and went into Syria itself. It was a privilege and a blessing, and an experience that absolutely changed me. Unfortunately, far more than I was able to change Syria itself. Bearing witness to something like that is a very overwhelming thing, to bear witness. To bear witness to something so great, then we know what that means as Muslims, to bear witness. And I bore witness to what was happening in Syria for 5 days. And it was hard because, as Arab American activists coming from the outside, we were so excited about everything and so eager to help, but obviously a group of 20 activists aren't going to bring down the regime single-handedly. We're not going to be able to help feed all of the thousands of people that we saw, much less the millions and millions of people that remain in need. We weren't able to help provide safety and security to the 4 million internally displaced refugees within Syria. These are people who had to flee their homes and flee their safety. 4 million people in a country of 23 million. And that's aside from the 1 million refugees who have left Syrian borders to find safety and security elsewhere, in countries that are less than friendly to Syrians right now, unfortunately. So it was a very overwhelming experience to see how much needs to be done. But at the same time, I was curious before my trip whether I would leave more optimistic or more crushed and disappointed, and by far I left far more optimistic. The Syrian people in general are amazing, and the Syrian people are extra amazing, and I got to witness so many amazing things, and I hope to share a little bit of that with you today. So this was my first view of liberated Syria, and I broke down like a baby at that first sight. This was in the Utme refugee inn. It's incredibly beautiful, right on the border between Turkey and Syria. There are an estimated 13,000 people there, and it is just, like, this picture doesn't capture that, nor does this one, but this gives a little bit more context to it. It is rows upon rows of tents, stretching for about a mile, with no privacy, no foundation. It's muddy and dirty, and yet it was still so amazing to see how people were able to make any kind of circumstance, or they were able to thrive in any kind of circumstance. And ultimately, we only spent a few hours, and then we moved on to Qah. This is still in Utme, just to give an idea of how there is absolutely no privacy in these tents. I think that was one of the things that struck me the most. We talk about how people are hungry and thirsty, or what have you. So this is on our way to Qah. Qah is a smaller refugee camp than Utme. It's nestled in the village, right next to the village of Qah. And the village by itself is home to thousands of people who are seeking refuge and safety. But the refugee camp itself holds about, I think, 6,000 people or 7,000 people at the last estimate. We slept there for the night. It was a very humbling experience, even though the whole time we were treated as honored guests. And we were given the best tent in the camp, and we were fed the best food available. But it was still a tent in a camp, and it was very humbling to see how these people are surviving. And I think it's easy to talk about being humbled, but it's something else entirely to see people doing so much more than you, with so much less. I was blown away by the life and the spirit of the people that I saw just in the camps. This was in the first 2 days of my trip. This girl, for example, I think this is a very dramatic picture, I realize, and it might be a little controversial, but she just left such an amazing impression on me. Her name is Ragda. She fled with her mother to the Qah camp after her father and her siblings were killed in our village in Idlib. And the way that she spoke about her family, just completely distant. And she only told me, about the tragedies that her family had gone through after being prompted. And the way she did it, it's obvious that she has found so much power and strength as a child to be able to go on a day-to-day basis and be where she is today. And we brought in money to help open a school in Qah, and she got to go to school the next day, which was an amazing thing to see. But she was just something incredibly special, and I keep her in my thoughts and prayers all the time, just as someone who, in the humbleness of her presence and the strength of her character as a child, completely blew me away, and that's something that I saw a lot in Syria. After the 2 nights in the camps, we moved on to a night in Idlib. This was the first glimpse of destruction in Janjanaz, a small village in the suburbs of Idlib. And this was, again, like a very, we're used to, like, I see these pictures and I react so much more strongly than to the pictures that I see on a day-to-day basis on the internet or on, Facebook and such. Even though I spent 2 years completely immersed in those, when I first went into Jejanaz, into this small village, which relatively speaking had seen lots of destruction, but was still more or less intact. And this little bit of destruction blew me away, so it really was a completely different experience to see it for myself. After Jejanaz, I had the amazing blessing of going to the city of the village of Kaframba. Kaframba has been famous throughout the entire revolution for the strength of its protests and the cleverness of its posters and the unity of its people. And we got to participate in a protest there, the entire group, and it was the most thrilling experience. There are truly no words for it. But the fact that they have weekly protests, several days a week. This was on a Wednesday, so it wasn't as well participated. But 2 days later, on a Friday, there were hundreds of people, and this happens regularly. When the media tries to talk about Syria as exclusively violent, as a civil war, it completely fails to capture the fact that the spirit of all of this, what's been going on, remains a revolution. At its heart, at its core, the dreams that people are dreaming, the values that people keep in mind, the actions that they value the most, such as these protests, remain. No one laughs at them. No one says they're pointless these days. No one says, what's the value in them anymore, because they recognize that these small acts that I was so blessed to be able to participate in are what are going to carry the country of Syria through this, and what's going to make us stronger after the regime falls. So these are two girls in the protest that again just struck my heart with their picture. But of course, one of the big lessons that I took away from Syria was that everything sweet comes with something bitter, and everything bitter comes with something sweet. In this case, the amazingness of the protest came with a very intense night. After spending one of the most amazing days of my life, and we retired to a home that someone had graciously provided for us, that was when we started hearing the loudest shelling that we heard of the entire trip. There was no electricity to begin with, it was all generators, but even the generators went out, and the windows were shaking, and the smell, I remember the smell of gunpowder, this very bitter smell that just was overwhelming. And this was a few hours into the night after we all calmed down a little bit, but to go through something like that, and then the next day, everyone that we met with the day before was laughing at us. This was something completely normal that they used to, and it turned out the shelling was, several streets down, but it was still loud enough to be such an overpowering experience. The day after participating in a revolution reminded me of how expensive the cost of our freedom is. So I got to feel completely liberated. I felt like a liberated Syrian, even though I have the privilege of living in safety in the US, by participating in a protest. And then I got to taste the cost of that liberation that night when I heard the feeling of helplessness when the Assad regime starts shelling its own people. So it was, again, like I said, nothing bitter comes without something sweet, and nothing sweet comes without something bitter. And I think that especially applies to Syria. And again, even though they're under such circumstances, the strength was just amazing. And it really shows how little we are offering in return. This is a picture of a masjid in Kaframba, and it was shelled, and it killed a worshiper in the corner. They erected a wall to replace the damage, because the recovery of Syria, the rebuilding of Syria, is not something that's going to happen the day that the regime falls. It's something that is already happening. The healing from the dictatorship of 40 years began the day the revolution started, and the healing from the revolution is already a process that's taking place in the rebuilding of our masjids, in the rebuilding of homes, and the organizing of communities, and in the way people find their voice. Syria is being rebuilt, and our society is being rebuilt. And they are, I'm including myself in them, but they're the ones doing the work. They are setting in place the foundation for a strong and free and democratic country in the future, no matter what anyone else tries to tell us. So that's, something that, a lesson that I found just in a little masjid. After Kabbani, we visited Aleppo, and in Aleppo we distributed food baskets that looked like this, and it was a lot of fun to get the food baskets ready and to distribute them in the city. But I think the most intense experience of the whole trip, even aside from the shelling that happened a mile away, was the act of distributing the food baskets. And this is where I want to drive the point home that even someone here that donates every month a significant amount of their paycheck, that spends hours and hours rallying for Syria, telling people about the situation there, watching the videos, finding out information, and sharing it, that is a drop in the bucket of what the people there offer just by existing, just by resisting. As our country goes through this struggle, as our country goes through this revolution. This is a house that housed 20 people, and we were there in fair weather, but this was where they stayed in the winter. This is where they stayed while rain and snow fell through the cracks in their home. And when that's where they struggled to find food for everyone that was staying in that house. And that was by far the most overwhelming part of the trip. That was by far the worst feeling of helplessness I have ever known. Because even though, alhamdulillah, we brought a significant amount of aid with us, it is never enough. It is never enough to cover the need for everyone there. And because no one is left unaffected. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons that I want you all to take away, is that no one's life is unaffected. Everyone has suffered in Syria to a huge degree, more than anything you can imagine. The very fundamental aspects of day-to-day life have changed completely for them. The rules of the game are different. And so it's up to us to make that game for them just a little bit easier. So I really hope that tonight I was able to share my experiences just a little bit. I'm going to scroll those the remaining pictures real quickly, because the stories from Syria are so amazing. I could talk about them for hours. This was a school that people had started just in someone's home because they knew the value of education for the kids there, even despite the circumstances. And I hope that I was able to share a little bit of my story. It was an amazing trip. I hope to repeat it. Like I said, I think people aren't aware of what they're capable of. And in Syria, people have proven what we're capable of. We're capable of amazing things. We're capable of amazing acts of love, of strength, of solidarity, and resistance. And people in Syria are proving that every day. Thank you for your time, everyone. I hope that we're able to follow in the path of Syrians just a little bit and to show some of that same strength and love and generosity today.
Better. Now our beloved Munshid and songer, Akhi Yahya Hawa. We all here to hear him perform on the city He's been flying for close to 12 hours. He did not get a chance to rest, and he will be flying on a killer flight also. So take it easy on him.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. حياكم الله جميعا. وإن شاء الله يا رب هالجمعة الطيبة الخيرة نعود فيها بخير لأهلنا بسوريا اللي بحاجتنا فعلا. كنا بالسيارة وإحنا جايين هلا عم يحكي لي الدكتور إنه تعبنا فعلا، الناس تعبت استوى. قلت له صح، إحنا تعبنا برا استوينا يمكن شوي، لكن جوا لسه تعبانين أكثر مننا. فعلق حكى الدكتور كلمة، قال لي في ناس ملت للأسف ولسه بشار ما مل من قتل أهلنا تحت. فإن شاء الله نتسلل الملل لقلوبنا، كلياتنا تفاؤل وأمل إنه الرجعة لسوريا بحرية عن قريب إن شاء الله. رح نجتمع بإذن الله في الشام عن قريب، في ساحات حلب، في ساحات حمص، في ساحات حما، في كل ساحات سوريا إن شاء الله رح نجتمع عن قريب. قولوا إن شاء الله يا رب. تعليقا دكتور عم بقول إني أنا مسافر، إذا فهمت صح ما بعرف، لأنه أنا إنجليزياتي يعني شوي، إنه مسافر صار لي بكرة مسافر. كان عم يحكي لي الدكتور نفس الشيء هذا حكي، قلت له يعني نحن شو تعبنا عم نطلع بهالطيارة وننزل بالفندق تحت. لما آخر زيارة إلي كنت أعمل له بالسيارة، آخر زيارة إلي لسوريا بصراحة قضيت 3 أيام كلها رعب، يعني أختنا الله يجزيها خير اللي كانت موجودة، لدرجة إني صرت أحكي بيني وبين نفسي لك أنا شو اللي وداني، شو جابني شو اللي ورطني هالورطة هاي، لولا إنه الواحد عنده عمل بده يأديه يمكن كان طلعت من قبل ما كمل 24 ساعة. فنحن كل التعب اللي عم نتعبه وكل اللي عم نقدمه حقيقة ما بيساوي، والله ما بيساوي صوت مدفعية لما بتسمع الطلقة طلعت إلى أنه تسمعها وقعت وأنت قاعد متوجس وأنت توقع على القذيفة، على البيت اللي أنت قاعد فيه ولا على البيت اللي جنبك، رح توقع على الطفل ولا توقع على مستشفى ميداني الله أعلم. فكل تعبنا حقيقة ما بيساوي لحظة رعب عم يعيشوها أهلنا تحت، الله يفرج عنهم عن قريب إن شاء الله. رح أبدأ بالأغنية اللي بدينا فيها الثورة السورية اللي تمثل أطفال درعا اللي كتبوا على الجدران، فسمعونا تحية لأطفال درعا حقيقة. ما ممكن ننسى درعا وكذا.
بكرة الطفل بيكبر
شوي شو رايكم ولا؟ خمسة العادية؟ ليش في حماس معنا هون؟ نحن كلنا سوريين بس عن جد حاب اعرف في حماسنا؟ ما في اغلبية حماسنا على غير هذا شو القصة؟ طيب شوام في عندنا شوام؟ من دمشق؟ حلبية في من حلب؟ في حلب. طيب ان شاء الله نحن كلنا سوريا، نغني لسوريا اول وبعدين ان شاء الله جاي الدور. بدنا نردد مع بعضنا سوريا سوريا حرية متفائلين انه نرجع على سوريا قريبا؟ مين متفائل؟ الكل متفائل. طب الكل بده يردد معنا راجع راجع والنصر بايدي، ان شاء الله راجعين وباذن الله منتصرين معنا جوا سوريا على القريب ان شاء الله. يسأل الشباب جاهزين تيجوا معي لهون على المسرح؟ جاهزين؟ يلا سمعنا تحيه للاطفال الحلوين اللي معنا. الشباب يجوا معنا، شو نغني لكم؟ حمص العادية بدكم؟ لا بدنا نكونوا حافظينها، ما بتحكي ما بغشش بدنا نشوف حافظين منهم. تغنوا معي راجع راجع؟ جاهزين؟ يلا بسم الله راجع راجع والنصر. طيب بس بدنا منكم تشجيع وترددوا معنا راجع راجع مشان الاطفال. يلا بسم الله. صوت كويس. كانوا ممتازين ولا ما ممتازين؟ يلا نغني مع بعض حياتي لله بصوت عالي مثل هلا. يلا ومن معنا يا الله، نتمنى بك يا